All right, welcome everyone. Deep bow to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and especially to all of the people that are, well, all of the beings that are making the time to be here, to taste the essential experience of being a human being or being alive, which is precisely this moment. Today we will have a bit of an introduction to Buddhism and meditation, and then we will get into Tabarwa, or original nature, or ultimate nature. So we'll cover all the bases today. And this gathering is a gathering of people on the path. So this is a gathering of meditators, of refuge takers, people who are concerned with Buddhism and meditation, and people who are willing to do the work. Really, this is not a space that can be easily consumed. This is really a space of practice, a space of training, a space of mindfulness, and also detachment, meaning that we are mindful of all kinds of different things, but we don't get stuck. We don't get locked into any particular thing, particular idea or experience, but we will look together at many different things that can be useful for being more happy and being more free from our own suffering and from the disaster that, that this life tends to be a lot of the time, right? So we're serious about it in this community. This is a community of practice. It is a rare and precious space online. We are only, as far as I'm aware, really the only group that is doing this kind of work primarily through Discord. It has been for some time. And of course, all of our events and our community gatherings are to do freely, to experience freely, to practice freely. There's no expectation, there's no subscription model, there's no charge. We're here to practice and to support each other with our practice and through our willingness to do all kinds of different good deeds in whatever way that we may be able to. And a celebration for Melissa Palmer, who just sent a $9.99, not $999, but a $10 super chat on YouTube. So round of applause for Melissa Palmer. Thank you, Melissa. That's great. That's wonderful. And it brings us to the beginning point for this gathering today, which is the basics of Buddhism. Now, for the past few days, we've been looking at kind of Tabarwa Buddhism or Zen Buddhism or Chan Buddhism, which is the Buddhism of sudden awakening, the Buddhism of direct pointing to the Buddha mind that is right here and now, that is already inside of you, kind of like, drinking tea. It is beyond in and of itself. It is, it is inherently beyond contrivance, complicated thinking, spirituality. Um, and if something like drinking tea can be beyond, well, how much more so everything, immediately, everything. But when we are not yet enlightened, or when we are not yet particularly experienced in concerning ourselves with stopping thought or turning a single thought around, right? To look at the original mind, my goodness, to look at our original nature, our original experience. Just in the same way, it's so vital, it's so alive, just in the same way that someone who, didn't have water for a long time. Can you imagine? You're so thirsty. And actually, when you're so thirsty like that, the most delicious thing that you can drink is just water, just plain water. It's amazing. And so that turning a single thought around and recognizing your nature, recognizing your original mind, recognizing the truth that is at the core of your existence and always has been, it is fantastic. It's just delicious. It's wonderful. But it is also free of characteristics. And because of that, it's easy to get lost in the sauce. It's easy to confuse the clouds for the clear blue sky, right? It's easy to confuse characteristics for the original nature, or that which does not rely on anything, let alone characteristics. So I want to say a little bit about the basics of Buddhism because it's very important that we approach Buddhism in a very basic way, in a very practical and grounded way, so that we don't lose our shoes while we're trying to go for a long walk. Right? We want to know what our shoes are and where they are and how to put them on. So in Buddhism, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We don't take refuge in Sri Ramakrishna. We don't take refuge in Sadhguru. We don't take refuge in the Hare Krishna mantra. Okay, we don't take refuge in Andrea Bocelli, who's a very top Italian singer. Okay, now it doesn't mean that we don't come across different spiritual traditions or experiences or people or wonderful things in our life, delicious food, precious things, right? Precious people, but we don't take refuge in that. And taking refuge is like when we remember that we are afloat in a great ocean, in a great expanse of uncontrollableness, right? Just life, just experience in a great ocean of impermanence or the ocean of samsara. We take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, let's say, is the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, who became enlightened, and then also our Buddha nature, or our original mind, which is waking up, cutting through all the cheese to where the cheese vanishes. Everything vanishes, right? Just awake. And we also take refuge in the Dhamma, which is the Buddhist teachings, and not just whatever Buddhist teachings, whatever we happen to call Buddhist teachings, but we take refuge in the teachings, the Dhamma, that we can connect with, that we can understand, that can guide us in a practical way in terms of what we do and what we don't do, right? So a massive part of the Dhamma is the precepts. We don't think about the precepts. We practice them. We follow them. We don't need a philosophy to not kill, to not steal, to be careful about our speech, to be careful about our sexual energy, to be careful about what we take into our body and how it affects our mind, right? And then we take refuge in the Sangha. Okay, so the Sangha is certainly the community of ordained monastics and also the community of enlightened people. And really, we will be able to see as much enlightened as someone is according to our own experience, right? So it's a common wisdom saying that the good qualities that you see in me, they are in you. That's why you can see them in me. The bad qualities that you can see in me, and that's very convenient, they are in you already. So in this way, we're not kind of stuck in a self-other narrative, and we're not confused about things we don't understand because we are perceiving what's experientiable in our own mind, right? So we have to use our gut, we have to use our intuition, and we have to know how to let go. So the Sangha of ordained monastics, sure. The Sangha of people who are enlightened, right? And we can just see that as our deepest recognition of our freedom nature and how we would act according to that nature. And it is also the Sangha of well-minded practitioners on the path, concerned with the Buddha and the Dhamma, right? And we use our gut and we use our intuition to see what's what and see what really, it's not about ultimately good or bad, but it's what you can digest. So let's say that you are lactose intolerant. It doesn't mean that all cheese is bad, but it means that you don't eat cheese because you're lactose intolerant. And the same way with some enlightened teachers that you might come across, or well-minded practitioners that you come across where you just don't get along with them and you're not able to practice with them, right? So if you're kind of mostly self-directing, mostly relying on your self-power, your self-understanding, then you say, "Oh, I cannot digest that." So it's not that it's good or it's bad, but that you don't rely on what you cannot digest. And so it means we know how to let go and come back to our Sangha, what we can digest, to our teachers, to our community, right? To our enlightened masters that we know about, that are under the umbrella of Buddhism. I can't really give recommendations outside of that because we're talking about the basics here. And anyway, there's so much in Buddhism, there's so much diversity, there's so much you can make use of already. So we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and then we concern ourselves with the Four Noble Truths. Okay, this is the basic praxis of Buddhist philosophy. This is what the Buddha taught. There is suffering, that's for sure, right? And this suffering is like, we're not satisfied. I'm not satisfied. I'm not satisfied, right? I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to run to the cafe and start yelling at people? No, it's a recognition, right? That unsatisfactoriness is a quality of the human experience, and that the cause of that suffering is our desire. The cause of that suffering is that we want something else from what we already have. And this also is a form of aversion. So what we're experiencing, we want something other than what we're experiencing. Actually, we're not trying to get rid of anything. It's just we want something. It's that grasping, it's that clinging, it's that chasing after something else that's better than what we're experiencing. Because also, the reason for that is that pleasurable experiences are also unsatisfactory, inasmuch as they cannot be relied upon, and as much as you do rely upon it, as much as you do grasp or contract around it, that is how much you will correspondingly suffer or be unsatisfied when that is no longer there. And it is impermanent, so it's not going to be there. So there is unsatisfactoriness. There's a cause of unsatisfactoriness, which is our chasing, our desire, right? And then right off the bat, number 3, there is nibbana. There is cessation of suffering. This unsatisfactoriness comes to an end. That is nibbana, that is peace, that is enlightenment. Simple, right? Peaceful people are peaceful. They're not causing suffering. They're not causing problems. They're not debating. They're not arguing. They're not stressed. They're not angry. They're not greedy. They're not lost in non-practical, complicated thinking. They're not. They're at peace. They're enlightened. And then 4th, there is a path to ending suffering. All right, and we call this the Eightfold Path. Right view, right action, right livelihood, right concentration, all this jazz, right? All these subtle points. But I like to form it like this. And this is pretty standard, pretty boilerplate. The Buddhist path is dana, sila, samadhi, panya. All right? And it's not one after another. It's not a checklist that you have to go through, but it's how you practice. And the doorway to the practice is dana, is generosity. What is generosity? What is being a generous person? And really what it is that we concern ourselves with the needs of others. We concern ourselves with the needs of the environment. We concern ourselves with that which is not self, not this body and not this mind. And then we act in that direction. Now, we often think about that, especially in a Buddhist context, we think about that in terms of donating. We think about that in terms of money. We think about that in terms of putting food in the monk's bowl. Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but don't be limited about your understanding of generosity. So that just like with many things, the deeper the question is, the more rich it is, the more robust it is, the more intimate and subtle it is, the more benefit that you're going to get from asking that question, right? So what is generosity? What does it mean to be a generous person? What does it mean to go beyond my self-focused life and to offer out and to widen out myself, my value, my preciousness, my body and mind? So if we want to become a Buddhist, and if we want to understand the deep, ultimate, special teachings, karma, rebirth, cosmology, all that stuff, right? And we don't really need to want to understand that. That's not what Buddha teaches us, to want to understand karma, or to want to understand rebirth, or to even want to understand impermanence, or no self, or unsatisfactoriness. We're not here to understand unsatisfactoriness. We're here to transform it. And a part of that is understanding it, or being with it, or looking at it very deeply. And the generosity, it allows us to be with that very deeply without it just being this contraction, this constant contraction about me, mine, I. And so that notion, that way of generosity breaks our limiter, breaks the bounds of this body and mind, so that we don't get so stuck in ourselves. Even though there's a suffering in the body, or a suffering in the mind, or complicated situation in our life, wow, we see that who we truly are, what we truly are, is much broader than that, much wider than that. And so those thoughts and those narratives, right, those mental phenomena and those physical phenomena that we contract around, well, they don't control us anymore, because that word everything takes on quite a sincere meaning. I am the clouds, I am the trees, I am the blue sky. So why am I stuck? Because I feel tired, or because I have this perfect idea about this and that. Oh, I can't go for a walk unless I can go for a run. I can't exercise, I can't eat healthy unless I eat completely healthy all the time. I can't lose weight unless I lose 100 pounds today, right? And that's the wrong mindset. We get stuck in ourselves, that perfection. So that giving out and that offering out, it helps a lot. So this is like the positive generosity, where we take something valuable, especially our time, our body and mind. That's why volunteering is very good for Buddhist practice. And you give it away, you offer it out. Ideally without not so much attachment, but anyway, we practice it, we exercise it, that generosity of mind. Now, we move forward from that to the negative generosity, which is the restriction of what we do. So first, what we do, and second, what we don't do, which is following precept. And actually, it's more subtle than doing or not doing. It's more like a recognition or remembering of mindfulness. Both are like that, right? But now we follow precept. And that means, and we can say in the positive, we can say say it in the negative way, and negative is not really negative, and positive is not really positive. But what it means is that we respect all life, we respect the properties of others, we are very considerate about what we say, And we watch out for lying, we watch out for speaking harshly, and we watch out for long-term idle chatter. Long-term idle chatter. We watch out for that. We watch out for um, the possibility for our sexual energy to harm ourselves and to harm others, to harm our own mind and body, to harm the bodies and minds of others. So we're very careful about sexuality. You don't need to be celibate to be a Buddhist, but you do need to be very, very careful about your sexual energy. And number 5, we watch out for what we take into our body, right? We're mindful. And so that we don't intoxicate ourselves, we don't lose ourselves in substances. There's a lot of medicines out there that are very helpful. So it's bringing mindfulness to what you consume so that you don't intoxicate yourself. Okay? So you want to be a Buddhist, you want to wear beads or something like that. Well, follow 5 precepts and you can do it. You can say, hey, I'm a Buddhist. But that's really the basics of Buddhism. That's really the fundamental practices of Buddhism. Do good deeds, be generous, follow precepts, be mindful, and that's it. Practice, go for it, right? Give your spirit and your energy and your attention to that and be very sincere about it. And when you get into trouble in your life or in your intellect, you come back to the practice, okay? And so that's generosity and virtue, or dana and sila. And then what supports that is you're taking refuge. So you take refuge in the Buddha. So you can have a Buddha statue in your house, for example, and you look at that Buddha statue and what do you remember? Buddha mind, original mind, waking up, enlightenment, the ending of suffering. And you take refuge in that. All right? You take refuge in the Dhamma. So you're listening to Dhamma talks. So you're not talking to random people to try to figure out what's what. You're listening to Dhamma talks from some of the most wonderful masters in the world. Okay, and if you consider this to be Dhamma, you can come here and listen to this too. But Thich Nhat Hanh, Ajahn Brahm, my teacher, Sayadaw U Thammasara, who's doesn't have as much accessible for Western people, but there's a lot of wonderful teachers out there. Ajahn Sumedho, okay? And we listen, we take refuge in that Dhamma, not just in what we come up with about ourselves, about others, about the world, about politics. We may be involved with that, but we don't take refuge in that. We take refuge in the Dhamma. And then we don't take refuge in our local bar and, having drinks with the pals and with the chums, but we take refuge in the Sangha. It means we seek out communities of meditation. We seek out communities of monks and nuns. And we seek out practice communities, well-minded practitioners. And then we can make groups. We can make Sangha groups. We can hold a meditation session in our home. We can invite people to come over and listen to Dhamma talks together. We take refuge in the Sangha. So Dana, Sila, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That's a lot. And it's not complicated. And you could write it down on a little piece of paper and you've got the map right there. Now, the 2 other words we will look at is samadhi and panya. Samadhi and panya. So samadhi is really speaking about absorption into meditation. And we can think about that in terms of the difference between when we wake up and we feel very tired and we feel very groggy, and Buddha forbid we had quite a bit to drink the night before, right? So we're waking up, we're tired, we're groggy, maybe we made some bad decisions, and we feel a mess. We'll say, oh, we're not truly ourselves. And then maybe the day goes on and we do some good deeds. We have our coffee. We get things together, and now we're bright and aware, right? We're in a state of kind of like calm abiding. We're present and we're aware. So samadhi is kind of pointing to that kind of state, as not being that state of conflictedness or stress or tangledness, but even further, even deeper. right? And so there are these states of mind that we can get to in meditation that happens naturally, right? And happens when we practice dana and sila and mindfulness correctly for the long term, where we get into these states and we're very, very peaceful, we're very, very aware, and it shifts our perspective on what it means to be a human being. It shifts our perspective on what the nature of our experience actually is. And when we have those deeper meditation experiences, it kind of clears out these hindrances that we tend to go through. Um, I've got a little bit of a map right here. Let me pull it up. So we talk about 5 hindrances in Buddhism. We can come back to our breathing at any moment. That's the Buddhist cheat code. Come back to your breathing. Hmm. What are the 5 hindrances here? They're right here. So these, when we get into samadhi, when we get into this deeper state of calm abiding, calm and relaxed, but clear presence, right? Very clear presence. We can start to work out and detangle ourselves from these 5 hindrances, right? So ill will, we want to cause harm for someone else, or we often have ill will towards ourselves. Sloth and torpor, so that kind of laziness, and we're wasting time, we're wasting our life force. Restlessness and remorse, so we're kind of restless and self-conflicted in our thinking, and it prevents us from the practices, right? It prevents us from doing good deeds because we're restless and conflicted in ourselves. Doubt, so we feel doubt about the efficacy of the practice. We feel doubt if doing good deeds or practicing generosity or following precepts can really help us, if it really works or not. That keeps us from practice. And then sensory desire. Oh, that's such a, and it applies to everything. It applies from top to bottom. We're not just talking about eating cake. We're talking about drinking water. We're talking about eating food. So it's very, very deep. And when we get into these, when these natural samadhi states or these natural absorption states of meditation come up, these hindrances kind of dissolve. And we realize, we see that our true nature, who we truly are, the original mind that we have, is free from control of these hindrances, is unhindered, is unbounded. Right? And then naturally our perspective, our identity starts to change. And when we are in this deeper state of meditation, and that's just a way of speaking, but we're able to examine the mind without being pulled around by all of these hindrances, right? All of these negativities, all of these wrong views, wrong ways of energy being applied in the mind. So then we can notice the marks of reality, the marks of truth. And that is anatta, anicca, and dukkha. Okay? That is impermanence, or Thich Nhat Hanh likes to say interbeing, non-self. Well, I guess non-self is interbeing from Thich Nhat Hanh, but impermanence and that unsatisfactoriness. And that unsatisfactoriness isn't a kind of like a nihilism, right? Like, oh, everything sucks, everything's miserable. No, it's rather a seeing through the tendency to grasp onto phenomena, right? That unsatisfactoriness, like, oh, I won't grasp onto that. And that's panya, that's insight, that's wisdom. So all of these steps and stages, all of these basics of Buddhism support us to practice. And I like the way my teacher says it, to do good deeds with mindfulness and detachment limitlessly. And so when you get sick, when you fall off the path, when things get confusing, come back to doing good deeds with mindfulness and detachment. Concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, informed by the praxis of the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, there's an end to suffering, there's a path to ending suffering. There is suffering, there's a cause of suffering, which is our desire. There's a path to ending suffering, and that path is Dana, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. That path is doing good deeds with mindfulness and detachment. So, as someone who's gotten to this point, who can digest this teaching, don't waste your time in debate. Don't waste your time in intellectual theory about karma or rebirth. If you're interested in those things, that's fine, that's wonderful, but you listen to Dhamma teachers speaking about it. Right? You listen to Ajahn Brahm speaking about it. You listen to Thich Nhat Hanh speaking about it. You listen to Ajahn Analayo speaking about it. Ajahn Sumedho speaking about it. And that's it. You don't rely on your intellect, your thinking, your meandering of thoughts, because you don't need to. And it won't work anyway. That's not what the path is about. None of the path is about thinking about things in the usual way that we think about things, but rather that stillness that allows us to act limitlessly, that clearness, that capacity to rest in our virtue or to rest in our mindfulness that allows us to do so much good and to not waste any energy. Okay, any questions about this introduction to Buddhism?
I have a question, I guess, about so I guess there's kind of this thing where it's like it's not about it's not about ideas or thinking about things, but like then what is it? I guess it's kind of hard for me to understand that, I guess.
What is your background?
So I've been a Buddhist for like 3 years maybe, but I've kind of been doing my own thing from like reading books. I was raised Hindu, um, and I think I have like pretty fundamental misunderstanding of Buddhism because I think with the beliefs I have, it kind of logically concludes to nihilism in some ways, and I guess that's not a good thing. And I don't know, when I talked with this about this with some people, they said basically like you're thinking about it too much. You know, you should be doing these things. But to me, I feel like that's also just another kind of like way of thinking about it. I just have the wrong way of thinking about it. So I don't understand, I guess, how you could think about things that having some kind of ideology or something.
What if you don't think about anything?
Hmm. And so, like, when you do get thoughts, because you can't exactly control it, like, you just kind of don't pay attention to it that much or something.
Well, it's like when a thunderstorm comes about, a real thunderstorm, a serious thunderstorm, lightning storm. You might like it, you might not like it, right? Some people like thunderstorms, some people don't, and some people are neutral about them, right?
Hmm.
So, what do you do then?
I don't know.
So, this answer also applies to what you do when thoughts come up and go away in the mind. Only don't know. Don't think about it.
Well,
What happens when you don't think about it?
then I guess it doesn't affect me or something.
That's still a thought about it.
I don't know.
So, if we want to have success in Buddhism, we should have a good relationship with not knowing. That's my approach. That's my understanding. The more that you think you know, and the more that you rely on knowing, the less you actually have a capacity to know through experience.
Mm-hmm. So
Not
there's
many,
also, I guess, yeah.
not much has been built by thoughts. You know, even if we are very like generous with this example or this idea, let's say human society has been built by thoughts, but I don't think that, I think that's probably too generous to say it like that. But even if we were to say it's like that, right? Most everything hasn't been built by thoughts. So people tend to have an addiction to thinking, and it's actually what makes them easy to control. It's what makes people easily manipulated by the Republicans and the Democrats and the advertising agencies, etc. Because people are addicted to thinking, and they think that thinking is the way that they will be able to most skillfully navigate through the world. But this is really not the case from my experience. I am most skillful, I am most wise, I am most peaceful, I can most enjoy a walk when I'm not relying on thinking about anything. I'm just walking. I'm just enjoying, especially being with a loved one or raising a child. That addiction to thinking is really problematic because those children aren't thinking. And if the way that you're transmitting your way of thinking or your mind to them is through an addiction, I think that's a major problem. Because yes, there are thoughts, but there's also the absence of thoughts. And without the clarity of that absence of thoughts, well, that's where people really get into trouble with their non practical, complicated thinking. So, to be a great Buddhist, you don't need to think about anything. That doesn't mean that you don't practice seriously. And
I guess my yeah.
just like a carpenter or someone who wanted to become a great carpenter, and they saw that someone was a great carpenter by the houses, by the structures they were able to build. We must also be able to use our own eyes to see. And then it's not about thinking. You know, even what is most important to you is not about thinking. Are your eyes about thinking? Well, take away your eyes. Now what are you going to think about? You're going to think about that you can't see anymore. Take away your ears. Your hearing, is your hearing about thinking? Is your hearing being propagated or supported by thinking? How about taste? How about touch? The sensation of having a body. So we give way too much importance to thinking, and we give way too much importance to the intellect. Now, from an outsider, from someone who doesn't quite understand about the clarity of no thought, they may think that this is if I don't think about things, I'll just be led around like like a horse, and people can just tell me whatever to do. But it's really not the case. Because if you're not relying on thinking, then you can see clearly, you can hear clearly, you can experience the whole body mind clearly. And that's where your wisdom is, not in thinking. Thinking is just like a mental phenomena that comes up and goes away. It's not very reliable. What you think about is already not very reliable. And from the science that I've read, there's no evolutionary push for it to be reliable in any absolute sense. It's just we've evolved to be able to put food in our mouth and do it like that, for the species to survive, not for us to have an objective view of the way that things are. So
I guess I can.
it's actually through detachment. It's through giving away that we get back the freedom of giving away.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of, well, a concern is that since I'm a student, I have to make decisions like what should I prioritize? I also need to think like to do my work, stuff like that. So that kind of became difficult. Became difficult to practice Buddhism and also like maintain, I guess, a normal life.
Well, then you're practicing the wrong way. Simple as that.
Well, how do I do it without thinking?
Thinking is already with non thinking. If you didn't have space in between your thoughts, then your thoughts would just be a jumbled up mess. It'd be like you were in a dream. It'd be like you were having a dream. So a lot of it is this: educated people are arrogant right off the bat. Educated people and Western people and American people and any educated people tend to be arrogant because we are in a time and in a world where human beings, average everyday human beings who haven't necessarily had special training in anything, are living better than kings did. Kings of empires 100 years ago or 200 years ago or what have you, in many, many ways. So we tend to be very arrogant. To maintain a state of non-thinking, no, you can't do that. You couldn't if you tried. Someone would have to hit you over the head for you to do something like that. It's not realistic. So the intellect is constantly grasping on all these different ideas to justify its importance, right? Uh, to say, I am here, I am real, this is separate from that, and these characteristics are more important than those characteristics, and what about this, and what about that? It's never, 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 never ending. That's why, as Buddhists, we don't proselytize, we share, we offer, we receive, but we're not proselytizing to people. Because if they're interested in it, then that's great. And we can tell them how to practice and we can invite them to be there with us. But no one can convince you to be generous. That's the power and that's the beauty of generosity, real generosity. No one can convince you to put down what you've picked up. Only you can do that. And when you have the privilege to come into a space where putting it down is the priority, you can be along for the ride and listen deeply and hopefully get something from it. Or you can put down what you've picked up, or you can get out. And that's not not an imposition being put on you. That's just what you can do. Go ahead, Josh.
So I don't think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's to say that thinking should never be done. There are times when thinking is necessary. It's just when you're practicing to to let go of the thinking.
And to have enough humbleness and openness to try. Because unless you can try, then you won't know. You won't have any experience. That's why when we go to a Buddhist temple, when we go to a meditation group like this, and people, this is just something that happens. People come in and want to, be convinced about what to do. You can only be convinced by trial and experience. Give it a shot and then come back and have something to say, right? You have to go do the math and then bring back your proof and I'll examine it. And I'll tell you if it's accurate or not. You tell me what you did, what the result was, what your understanding is now, and I'll tell you if you did work or not. But debating about or discussing about the principle, the praxis of if math is real or not, or if math is valid, or if math is practical or workable, that's maybe something that you have to do for yourself before you decide to go into a math lecture. So, anyone else have any questions about the basics of Buddhism, introduction to Buddhism?
I have a question. So sometimes when I'm meditating, I can enter a really deep state naturally with no effort whatsoever. Other times, I also have no effort, and I'm just feel like I'm just sitting there. Is that normal?
Yeah, I mean, everything is normal and everything is impermanent. So you just experience that and, don't think about it. Dogen said, think non thinking. When you're sitting there, think non thinking. And we can certainly practice a lot of meditation and it can bring us a lot of deep experiences. But the bigger picture is that we're bringing meditation into our entire life, into everything. And when we notice that something has a quality of calmness and relaxation, but also presence, also aliveness, that is correct. That is correct. But if you have any particular experience in meditation, right, and then you grasp onto that, like falling or seeing colors or the body expanding or shrinking, any things along those lines, you just don't think about it. You just keep practicing, right? That's the important point.
I notice it's harder for me to, or I shouldn't say harder. It's I don't end up getting in that state when I cling on. It takes longer, more practice to get back to the same state that I got into before. I That's a pattern I noticed.
And we will be coming across many, many, many patterns. So don't get stuck or fixated on any patterns. We're developing the capacity to detach from patterns. That's what the essence of what we are doing in detachment meditation is. A certain form of vipassana meditation. So the samadhi or the deep relaxation or the deep calmness and awareness is just to allow you to view the phenomena that are coming up and going away without attachment, so that you can be more clear about the impermanent nature of everything, right? And it goes from the root to the stem to the flower to the pollen, everything. It spreads out everywhere. So not to cling onto any particular experience, right? And to continue, because meditation is actually, it's right there with dana, sila. Um, it's not necessarily samadhi, but it's right there with dana, sila, which is the most consistent and accessible part of the path. And so it's like meditation is doing the highest good deed. So the more that you do good deeds, the more that you follow precept, the more that you don't do certain things, the more primed you will be to fall into these samadhi states. And then from that samadhi, you will have an awareness that is much less um, influenced by the hindrances, the ill will, the restlessness, all these things. And then you can perceive directly the nature of your mind and the nature of nama and rupa, or name and form. Okay, which
And what
is
does samadhi mean?
samadhi means like just absorption. It's kind of like by doing the dana, by doing the sila, by doing good deeds more and more and practicing mindfulness, it's like you're going up this hill. And then at a certain point, you get to the, just by cause and effect, it's not because you've done it intentionally, but you get to this certain point and then you start to fall. So samadhi is like the falling. And that's when your ego or yourself or your habit energy that maintains contraction kind of loosens by itself, right? And then you fall into that natural state, but it's not really that you got yourself there. Um, it's just a matter of cause and effect. So the trust and the faith is very, 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 very important. And it's not blind faith, it's not blind trust, because we're talking about practices here. I don't care what you believe. I'm not interested in what you believe. Practice and learn through your experience. And if you need some beliefs, I've got some good ones that you can use that I've found to be helpful, right? But it's not about belief, it's about practice. And then through your practice, you say, "Oh, wow, that definitely works. You know, when I do good deeds, when I follow precepts, I feel much better. Period." Right? When I break precept, I feel worse. Well, how do I want to feel? I want to feel good, and I don't want to feel bad. So I'm going to use this model and see how far I can take it. And and then you have faith. Then you stop thinking about it. Oh, Buddhism, Buddha, rebirth, karma, because you're too busy practicing to do good deeds with mindfulness and freeing yourself from expectation, because expectation makes us suffer, right? And then you practice more and
I've
more,
noticed it
and
truly
your faith
does. Like
develops more and more.
when you use empathy and you follow the eightfold path and all of these all the precepts, you set your intentions. It's like everything is significantly more aligned than it is when you're thinking about how to solve it and and adding stress and stuff like this. Everything stagnates and even goes backwards if you go in that mindset. But if you just let go, I find that things just kind of come together.
Okay, we have just a few more pages of this chapter that we've been going through, concerned with the ultimate nature, Tabarwa. You know, Tabarwa, my teacher's organization, we are a Theravada organization originating from Myanmar, but actually Tabarwa means original nature, right? So Tabarwa and also how Sayadaw teaches is very much in line with Chan or Zen Buddhism, actually. So I think we'll finish up with this chapter 2 from the book that we've been reading. Clouds, no, this is not Clouds and Water. This is A Bird in Flight Leaves No Trace. And this is a modern translation with commentary from Son Master Subul on the records of Chan Master Huang Bo. So let's go into this, the final part of this chapter's reading. Okay. Huang Bo. These days, practitioners of the way do not seek awakening within their own minds. Instead, they look outside their minds, clinging to characteristics and holding on to external objects, turning their backs on the way. Commentary. If you do not attain awakening, then even while calling on the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you turn your back on the Buddhas without even knowing it. The moment you turn one thought around and realize the true form of the nature, which is originally thus, you realize that you have been generating defilements and clinging to false appearances throughout your life, without even being aware of doing so. Okay, so speaking about seeking awakening outside of our own minds, seeking awakening from outside of our own direct experiencing right here and now, seeking it in the Buddhas, seeking it in external objects and characteristics, right? Oh, this is good, so that must be where awakening is. And in this way, turning their backs on the way that is not outside of their direct luminous experience right here and now. Huangbo. Regarding the sands of the Ganges, the Buddha said, even when all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as Indra, Brahma, and all the divinities, walk along those sands do not rejoice. Okay? Regarding the sands of the Ganges, Mother Ganga in India, holiest river in the world, right? So much sand on the banks, right? Think how many pieces of sand. So even when all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, all these kind of highly enlightened beings and powerful beings, right? Kings of freedom, even when all those beings walk along those sands do not rejoice. Even when oxen, sheep, ants, and insects tread along those sands are not enraged. Whether precious jewels or fragrant scents, those sands do not crave them. Whether shit, urine, stench, or filth, those sands are not repelled by them. This mind means the mind of no mind. Since they are in this way far removed from all characteristics, sentient beings and all the Buddhas have utterly no differences between them. If one is able to experience no mind, this is then indeed the ultimate realm. If practitioners of the way do not straightway experience no mind, they may train for numerous eons, but never achieve the way. As long as they are entangled in the meritorious practices of the three vehicles, they will be unable to attain liberation. Okay, so we have a description here of this no mind, right? Like the sands of the Ganges, whether it's shit, gold, Buddhas, sheep, or dead bodies, the sands do not crave them, they are not repelled by them, they do not cling, they are not stuck. This mind means the mind of no mind, not repelling, not attracting, not liking, not disliking, not reacting, just sand. Since they are in this way far removed from all characteristics, sentient beings and all the Buddhas have utterly no differences between them. So like the sand, representing the mind of no mind, not defining itself, not being influenced by any sorts of characteristics, since sentient beings and the Buddhas are also this way, there is utterly no difference in between them. So that in our essence or at our core, there's something there that is not repelling anything. There's something there that doesn't have preferences, right? In a breathing, in a seeing, in a hearing, in a just sitting there. There's something that's not preferential already, not waiting for the good or the bad to come in, not waiting for some circumstance, but is already non-preferential. And so this is like the sands of the Ganges, and this is also like Buddhas and normal human beings. And in this way, there are no fundamental differences between them. If one is able to experience no mind, this is then indeed the ultimate realm. If practitioners of the way do not straightway experience no mind, they may train for numerous thousands and thousands of years, but never achieve the way. As long as they are entangled in the meritorious practices of the three vehicles, they will be unable to attain liberation. Right? So it's like the boat analogy in Buddhism, that the teaching of the Buddha is the raft that leads us to the other shore, from this shore of samsara and suffering and miserableness and, difficulty, to the shore of nibbana, to the shore of peace. But if you get to the shore of peace, if you get to the shore of nibbana, are you going to carry around a raft on your back? That's not peace. That's not freedom. That's entanglement, right? So if we are entangled, even if we do a great job, even if we have a lot of success in this dana, sila, samadhi, panya, we go to Bodhidharma. When Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen, went to China and the emperor heard about this guy, the emperor said, "This guy's amazing. I've been doing all this stuff for Buddhism, and now we've got this monk that just came here from India. I want to talk to this guy. I want him to tell me how great I am. I'm the emperor after all, but I want to hear from this guy." So the Bodhidharma comes to see the emperor, and the emperor says, "I've built thousands of temples. I've fed millions of monks. I have established Buddhism all over China. Tell me what great merits I have received." And Bodhidharma said, "Nothing. You've gained nothing. You've made no merit." And then the emperor said, "What the heck? Who are you? Who are you to say this to me?" And the Bodhidharma said, "I don't know." So only don't know. Commentary. The nature is originally no mind. The nature is originally no mind. No mind refers to the perfect state in which you are able to accept and embrace everything. Widen out, brighten out, open the eyes, open the ears, open the heart, open your life. Now, the nature is originally no mind. No mind refers to the perfect state in which you are able to accept and embrace everything. If you do not realize no mind, you cannot achieve the way, even though you train yourself for years on end. Great Zen master Mazu Do Yi said, "The everyday mind is the way." And we can say, "The every moment mind is the way." However, if you create or seek out this everyday mind, you have already deviated from it. The mind that you originally possess, the mind that is untainted, uncontaminated, and pure, is in fact everyday mind, no mind, the original face and the source of the nature. The conditions that derive from this mind create all different kinds of perpetual objects. Turning one thought around, you realize that you and all the Buddhas and patriarchs are originally endowed with this same nature. Okay, so this no mind, this original face, this source of the nature is not human. It's not about the earth. It's not about chakras or astrology. It's everything already, before everything. So the conditions that derive from this mind, the conditions that derive from space or source nature, the conditions that come about from that original nature, create all different kinds of perceptual objects. trees and sounds and thoughts and depression and happiness. Turning one thought around, you realize that you and all the Buddhas and Zen masters are originally endowed with this same nature, this original nature. So turning that thought around, everything disappears. Everything appears. Everything, immediately, original. What could be gained? What could be lost when you turn that thought around to see the emptiness, to see the boundless nature of the original mind, to see the foundation on which all phenomena stand, the empty foundation, the spacious foundation of not light and not dark. It may be that you are able to practice by following a sequence of steps. However, do not cling to this way as the sole right way. For without realizing no mind, you will simply compound your ignorance. And a simple way to understand that is you might have a very sincere Buddhist practitioner. They might even be a Buddhist monk, something like that, who's been going on a step-by-step path for a very long time, right? And they're at this level, and their teachers at that level, etc. Now, if they are clinging to that path as being the sole right way, well, if they were to be challenged or to be trying to tell people about that, and then, a discussion or something or debate comes up, now they are attaching to that way as being the sole right way, the ultimate way. And so their ignorance would be compounded. Their clinging would be compounded. Their attachment would be compounded. So there's no sole right way of getting from this point to that point. It's just like this. The way is just like this. The Dharma is just like this. To be seen and heard and experienced right in the here and the now. Thank you, Ajahn Sumedho. Huangbo. Nevertheless, in realizing this mind, there is slow and fast. Commentary. I am ignorant. How is it possible I am not even slightly different from a Buddha? This wrong view comes from your attachment to your body. You must believe that from the standpoint of absolute truth, there is no distinction between you and a Buddha. Since you do not believe what you should believe and follow something ineffectual, instead, you become demonic and fooled by ghosts. Right? So let's read that one again. It's really beautiful. It's really profound. It's kind of a bridge between the East and the West, and a revitalization of the preciousness of belief as it is concerned with Buddhism, right? Which is really a practice, but we have beliefs. We have this tendency. So what kind of belief should we have? All right. Huangbo says, nevertheless, in realizing this mind, there is slow and fast. Commentary. It starts with a question. I am ignorant. I am suffering. I am deluded. I am in difficulty, right? I am ignorant. How is it possible I am not even slightly different from a Buddha? Answer. This wrong view comes from your attachment to your body. It's like a tree that has attachment to itself as being a tree separate from the soil. What's the deal? That's not going to work out. Not a smart tree, not a wise tree, ineffectual belief. So, I am ignorant. And this is this is a real question for everything we've been looking at in this text so far about the Buddha nature, and that your original mind is no other than the mind of Buddha. Things along these lines, right? So here it is. I am ignorant. How is it possible I am not even slightly different from a Buddha? This wrong view comes from your attachment to your body. your identification with your body, like a tree that identifies itself as being separate from the soil and the sun and everything. It's a wrong view. So, you must believe that from the standpoint of absolute truth, there is no distinction between you and a Buddha. Guess what? Interbeing, no self, it applies to everything. Everything, everything, everything. Okay? No self, interbeing. The tree that cannot be separated from the soil, no matter what you do. You can take an atomic bomb, you can destroy the whole earth, and you can't separate a tree from the soil. You cannot separate yourself from the Buddha. And what you know about the Buddha is already in you. That is your original mind. Huangbo. Nevertheless, in realizing this mind, there is slow and fast. Commentary. I am ignorant. How is it possible I am not even slightly different from a Buddha? This wrong view comes from your attachment to your body. You must believe that, from the standpoint of absolute truth, there is no distinction between you and a Buddha. Since you do not believe what you should believe and follow something ineffectual instead, you become demonic and fooled by ghosts. Here I am talking only about the nature. Whether different perceptual objects appear or not, you need only follow that original nature. You need not be attracted any longer by perceptual objects that arise in dependence on conditions. Okay, thank you very much, Son Master Sabul, Deepal. Huangbo. There are those who, on hearing the Dharma, attain no mind in a single moment of thought. But there are also those who attain no mind after progressing through the extended bodhisattva path, that is, the 10 faiths, the 10 abodes, the 10 practices, and the 10 dedications. There are even those others who attain no mind only after arriving at the 10 stages of the culmination of the bodhisattva path. Whether long and full of all kinds of different myriad practices or short, if you achieve no mind, then it will be right there. There is nothing more you need to practice or realize. In reality, there is nothing to attain. This is true, not false. Commentary. If you conclusively realize the innate no mind, you will know already that you have relied on your nature. Consequently, you will not delude yourself into thinking there is something else you need to attain. If you conclusively realize the innate, inherent, no mind, you will know already that you have relied on your nature. You have been relying on your nature. Consequently, you will not delude yourself into thinking there is something else that you need to attain. Huangbo. Whether you attain it in a single moment of thought or only after mastering the 10 stages, both approaches are equally effective. There is no distinction in their depth or shallowness. Prolonging practice merely entails sequential eons of needless bitterness and hardship. So we recognize that there's nothing to attain. We don't show up here to get anything, to attain anything. We show up here to share detachment, to share no mind, to remember, not to attain something that we don't have or that's something outside of ourselves, but to remember what is innate and then to share, to offer, like Huangbo is here. You know, Huangbo, Zen Master Huangbo, he must be really enlightened. Of course, there's no distinction with this stuff, but we can say he must be really enlightened. And yet here he is sharing this extensively. And we talked about during the beginning, the introduction to this book, that it's likely that Huangbo shared so generously and thoroughly with this person because of that person was a kind of record keeper, and he was known to do this. He was known to do this work. So Huangbo shared generously to bring benefit, to share this blessing of this remembering, of this pointing out, not to attain anything, not to develop anything, not to get anything. Huangbo, commentary. When facing a problem, some people can solve it at once, while others solve it only after numerous trials and errors. However, whether you solve a problem all at once or through a series of steps, the solution is the same. Those who toil for a long time are dim-witted. If you can attain a great awakening all at once, that is all you need to do. If you attempt to gain still greater awakening through more training, you cannot but be called foolish. What I realized first was shallow, but after further realizations I have gone still deeper. This statement appears to make sense, but it is flawed. Those who have awakened in this manner are clinging to a sequence of steps, and they teach their students to follow the same approach. Okay, last few lines here. Huangbo. Engaging in evil deeds or good deeds involves clinging to characteristics. If you cling to characteristics and perform evil deeds, you needlessly subject yourself to the cycle of samsara. If you cling to characteristics and perform good deeds, you needlessly subject yourself to toil and drudgery. Right? So this is the doing without attachment. This is the doing without expectation. This is the doing without grasping. This is the very important point. Because otherwise you will toil and trouble. But many people, they need medicines for their ailments. And so even if they are doing with attachment, even if they are doing in the grasping way, they can still help the others. They can still make blessings, right? They can still make merits. But certainly doing with that clinging to characteristics, you will get stuck in samsara and toil and drudgery. Commentary. Once a distinction is made between you and me, the discriminative mind is inevitably generated. Master Huangbo made Peizu awaken right away through the Zen of the great masters, without following a sequential series of steps. The moment Peizu turned one thought around and saw what he in fact possessed innately, his transformation was complete. However, even after you achieve a breakthrough, if you arouse the thought that you want to become a Buddha or Bodhisattva, you delude yourself, regress from your achievement, and ignore the instructions of spiritual mentors. Okay, has anyone become enlightened yet? Looks like Shelley, did you become enlightened? Not yet. Okay, well, hang in there. A few more lines. Huangbo. Neither is equal to achieving direct realization of the original Dharma for oneself through the words of a master. This Dharma is the mind. Outside the mind, there is no Dharma. This mind is the Dharma. Outside the Dharma, there is no mind. The mind is itself no mind, but it is also free from no mind. If you presume the mind is no mind, your mind will instead turn into something existent. Just silently accord with it, and let all discursive and conceptual thought come to an end. This is why it is said, the pathways of words and speech are eradicated, and the sphere of compounded things is extinguished. The mind is the Buddha, whose original source is pristine. All human beings possess it. Since even wriggling worms possess numinosity, they are but one single substance with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, without an iota of difference. It is merely due to delusory thoughts and discrimination that they generate various karmic fruitions. Commentary. If you attain a great awakening to the truth, you will naturally realize that you are not different from the Buddhas and will understand what has brought about this presumption of difference. The Buddhas appear in the world to reveal the path. The patriarchs and teachers have carried on this work in subsequent generations. Otherwise, how would we have come to know about this path? We should be grateful to them all. Okay, let's take a moment to be with our original mind together. Okay, dear Sangha, thank you all for being here with me today. I'm very inspired and I feel very supported by the community. And we will meet together tomorrow in this time range. And until then, I wish you all blessings, peace, and a powerful sense of recognition moment by moment, all right? Maybe we just finish with 3 friendly sadhus, which means well done and may it be so. So you're welcome to join me in 3 sadhus. Sadhu. Okay, be well, everyone.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Be well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Bhante.